All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us on a Tuesday. You know, we see these coronavirus press conferences every single day, and millions and millions and millions of people watching it, not only in this country, but throughout the world, quite frankly. And I always wanted to know, what is it like to be in that room when all this is going on? Well, someone who does a fantastic job for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, her name is Debra Saunders, and she is the White House correspondent. And when you hear Trump talking about Las Vegas, it's because of those great questions that Debra asked the president. Debra, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. How are you?
Hi, Debra.
There are millions of people watching those? Oh, no. I get my hair done.
There's quite a few, and let me just say, you've done a great job with the questions that you've asked there. I have to ask you this. As I mentioned, you know, millions of people, their eyes glued to the television watching these press conferences. What is it like for you personally? I know you've been doing this for a long time, but what is it like for you personally to be in that room during a pandemic? I mean, this is history that we're watching. What is it like for you?
Well, let me just say, I've enjoyed having social distancing in the briefing room because it's so much less crowded and I'm more likely to be called on, which I love. You know, basically the briefing room is 7 seats by 7 seats. That's 49 seats. But you usually see people jammed in the aisles, really, really pushing hard to get recognized. And the president has been sort of enjoying the fact that he can look out. There are 14 people there, and he calls on everybody eventually, almost every day. And so, and of course, this is like an incredible story. And it's not just a political story. What is going to happen to this country? What will the coronavirus do to this country? That's a question I don't think anyone can really answer. We all have our ideas, but we don't know. So it's been incredible to be there.
Do you have to get tested every single day for the virus, or how do they kind of police that in the briefing room?
Well, it's an honor system, so if you don't feel well, you're not supposed to go in. But they take your temperature every time you go in. So that's really all they do. They haven't. They tested reporters one day because somebody had symptoms who had been there the day before, but they haven't done any. I wish they'd have tests. Right?
Yeah, no question. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this: as you know, Donald Trump at times does blow up at reporters. He's never done that with you, thank goodness. But I want to play this audio for you. This is Trump blowing up at CNN reporter Jeremy Diamond. This is very recent, for questioning his self-praise while the coronavirus, continues to ravage the country. Have a listen to this, and then I want you to comment on it. Here it is.
All I played today was Governor Cuomo
to do that, sir.
saying very positive things about the job the federal government has done. And those people,
40,000 Americans have now died.
And those people have been just absolutely excoriated by some of the fake news, like you're CNN, you're fake news. And let me just tell you, they were excoriated by people like you that don't know any better because you don't have the brains you were born with. You should be praising the people that have done a good job, not doing what you do.
Okay, so I got to ask you, Debra, when Donald Trump explodes at some of these reporters, what's going through your mind?
Well, there are all sorts of different questions you can ask, and there are all sorts of different people in that room. Some of the people use the briefing room to basically lecture the president and ask questions that they already have the answers to in their minds, right? And it's a free country, and they're welcome to do that. But there can be consequences, and obviously, when you decide that's the role you want to take for yourself, and it's not like this is the only time that the CNN reporters ask that. That's what's going to happen. At least they're there in the room. At least nobody's saying you can't be there. And if that's the way they want to ask it, I think it turns a lot of people off. I think there are people who watch that and think that is, I don't think people care that much about the fact that Trump was a little slow to the party. And I think that's something that maybe people in one party care a whole lot about more than the other party cares about. I don't think it endears us to a lot of people who really feel that the media are very biased, and they have a real point. But I do think the president could be more polite about it, but he's not. By the way, do you know what he did to me? I was at that briefing. He called me ma'am.
Did he really? I didn't know that.
I didn't even notice until I had to go back and listen to the audio for the story I wrote. It's like
Right.
I've never felt so old.
Well, you're not old, number one, and like I said, you do a great job. Here's where I would ask you about this, because you've been a journalist for a long time. You would agree, though, that it's not the job of a journalist to congratulate the president. While I agree with you, sometimes members of the media ask questions that they probably shouldn't ask. But I think the majority of these people do ask fair questions. I really do. And I think they're doing a good job. And my personal opinion is I don't think there's anything wrong with holding the president accountable. For example, when it comes to testing, we had someone the other day ask him about testing. A few weeks back, ask about ventilators. I think when he is held accountable, I think it goes both ways. You can tell me if you disagree or not. When a reporter wants him to be held accountable for something he said or maybe not being prepared, I think he should just answer the question. Now, yes, I agree with you. Sometimes maybe a reporter might go over the line, but I think there's two sides to it. Would you agree with that, Deborah?
Absolutely. And I think there are a lot of questions to ask, especially about the fact that we really don't have enough tests. I don't care what they say. This country needs more tests, and it's going to be difficult for governors to get rid of their stay-at-home orders when they don't know, when they're not sure they can track who has it, who gets it, and who spreads it. So it's a big problem, and those are great questions to ask. The thing is, what bothers me about this question is, though, in fact, I was thinking I've got to go back and go through the transcripts and see how many times that question gets asked of Trump. Because I think it's like practically every day somebody says, hey, you said that everybody who wanted a test could have one.
Right.
That was like in March. And that's not true. Well, yeah, but we know that. And that's been asked before. I'd rather ask a question for which I don't know the answer. And to me, that's more productive. But like I said, it's a big country. And there are all sorts of people with different opinions. And I'm really glad that even the people who, sometimes I think are on a soapbox, at least I'm glad they get to be there, because there are a lot of different Americans. They all have different views, and they're represented one way or another in that room every day.
And you asked some great questions. I look forward to actually, when you do ask questions, I think you've had two or three that I can remember off the top of my head. At what point, where do you think the Las Vegas, not just the major casinos, not just the Sands of the world and MGM, but the casinos that you've asked about, do you think that right now they're in a position to actually get some federal funding?
So they're eligible to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program loans if these are casinos with under 500 employees. The problem is that they can't get them. I guess you can apply, but you can't get them if you get more than half of your revenue from gambling now. Well, I don't understand that. I've asked the president about it on two separate occasions, and it doesn't make any sense to me. No one's saying now the reason they're doing this are these old SBA rules that say that if you want to apply for SBA loans, those are the criteria. Fine. No one's asking the SBA to change those criteria. But the whole reason for the CARES Act was to make every business whole in the United States so they could keep their people on the payroll. And the idea that they did this, and I've talked to people, I've called around about this, it's just odd. And especially, by the way, he's the only president, I believe, who's ever owned a casino.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. That's 100% accurate. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Debra Saunders. She is the White House correspondent for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Does a great job in asking all those questions that everybody here, I don't speak for myself in Las Vegas and in the state of Nevada, want to know. We were talking a little bit about the media, and I agree with what you said. Whether some members of the media might be biased or not, to an extent, they deserve to be there. But what would you say about an organization like OAN, where they ask President Trump questions about Barack Obama? I remember one woman asked him a question comparing abortion to the coronavirus. I just think there's some organizations that shouldn't be there, and I would say OAN is one of them. I mean, what's your opinion on that network, and why are they there?
Well, once you start saying you can't be there, then, when the WHCA, White House Correspondents Association says people can't be there, you go down to a path that never ends. So I'm not for that. However, the WHCA worked out with the White House press office this social distancing schedule for the briefing room, right? And the way it works is, people are supposed to sit apart. Now, OAN isn't sitting down in those seats. The reporters you're seeing, Chanel being one of them, the one to whom you're referring, I think, she's standing in the back where she's not supposed to be. If you ask about it, she says, ask the White House. So apparently the deal is, and she had a seat, by the way. OAN had a seat, and she's lost the seat because she's violated the rules that everyone else is supposed to follow. And if she can violate it, I guess anybody else can, of course, but they weren't invited by the White House. My view is, well, gee, Donald Trump, if you like OAN so much, have them in for an interview and keep them out of the briefing room because they forfeited their seat by breaking the social distancing rules. And, the people who ask really fawning questions, they don't last. They don't have credibility. It's not a good career move, and it's not a good look. He doesn't even. There are questions he's been asked by OAN that he seems embarrassed by. So that's just it's amateur hour. But again, it's a big country. It's good that we have all sorts of different outlets in the room.
Can you take me through what you have to go through just to go to one of these pressers? Because my understanding, you have to get there really early, right? To the regular person like myself, who and I've been to plenty of press conferences, but I've been to presidential press conferences here in the state of Nevada, but I've never been to the White House before. So to the ordinary person, can you explain to us, if a press conference, for example, today is at 3 p.m., what do you have to go through? How early do you have to get there? How long are you there for? How does that work? Where do you have to walk? Can you just take us through that? What is that like, a normal day when you cover a press conference?
So normally these briefings, and remember, they didn't have briefings for about a year, right, until the coronavirus. So normally you'd have to get there. They'd say it's going to be these things used to start at 1 o'clock. Oh, that was such a great time, right? And so what would happen is you'd get there, and because at first I didn't have a seat, and so you get there so you'd have a good spot to stand in, and then of course they'd tell you, no, the press conference has been stalled. It'll be later, and and you spend a lot of time waiting. But with the coronavirus task force and only 14 people being in the room, you don't have to jockey like you used to. And they don't like you hanging around the White House. We're not supposed to be at the White House unless we have a seat. I have a seat. I'm on a rotation for a print seat. And I've also been there when I've been pooling. I pooled twice in the last month. And so when you're pooling, that's crazy. You want to hear about pooling?
Sure. Let's hear it.
100%.
Okay. So what is a print pool? You can't have every single print reporter going around with the president for every meeting. So they put together this pool where they have somebody from radio, they have somebody from TV, they have wires, they have print people, and they go into the Oval Office if the president has somebody in, and they talk about, whatever they see, they report on to people. And every reporter can use that as if they've done it themselves because you're standing in for other people. It is the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life because while we're all pretty supportive of each other, you don't want to make a mistake when you're pooling, right? And when you're, my biggest fear is going into the Oval Office and Trump speaks for 90 minutes because you're supposed to be sending out notes while it's happening.
Right.
Right.
For an example, that's like
crazy.
an Associated Press reporter, right? Very similar to that.
That's right. Well, the wire people, that's their trade, right?
Right.
They're really great at that.
But this isn't something that you do every day, right?
That's right. So I've pulled a little extra because there have been people who've been sick and there've been fewer outlets participating because they had stay-at-home policies. So I usually pull about once a month. Anyway, so. And if you're the pooler, you have a seat in the briefing room as well. So it's really like much more relaxed and easier to deal with now, unlike everything else for everyone else. But, like I do have to shower and get dressed that day.
Right. Of course. Well, the president's referring to you as ma'am, so I think that's a good start. Have you had conversations with, like, Jim Acosta or any of these national reporters? And can you tell us a little bit, off camera, have they treated you nicely? And are there people that you've become friends with? I mean, what are some of these national reporters like? And can you talk a little bit about the relationships you have with them? Because it appears to me that most of these people, they seem to be pretty decent people.
Oh, they're great. One day I'm in the Rose Garden and I'm wearing a hat. And Jim Acosta didn't recognize me. And he said, "Oh, excuse me, ma'am." And I just lit into him, by the way. He's like, "Don't call me ma'am. I don't like that."
What did he say to you?
So,
I'm curious. What did he say to you when you said?
So sweet. He was like, and all the other women around are going, "No, you don't say that to somebody you know." So he was really a doll. He was just a doll about it.
What do you think, though? What do you think, though, Deborah, about the people that give Jim Acosta a hard time? Because I actually think Jim Acosta is a fantastic reporter. Now, you could make the argument that CNN is biased and the gotcha questions, but
It's not really an argument, Brian.
Well, I think I have a lot of respect for Jim Acosta. I think he's very good at what he does. I mean, what are you're a middle ground, fair person, Deborah. What do you think of Jim Acosta?
He's a showboat, but he's a very good showboat. And
Yep. That's
again,
fair.
I'm glad he's in the room. I think it's great that he's there. And by the way, I mean, Donald Trump, you'll hear him complaining at times about Jim Acosta, but it's funny, doesn't he always call on him?
That's true. That's a good
I
point.
He definitely
just
does.
I mean, there are so many people Trump complains to, and he's like, "You're a terrible reporter," but geez,
Right.
he'll call on them 4 times. And
That's-
Well, that's because
an hour.
he secretly enjoys that attention. And I think that's, and he might be a bit of a merchant of chaos in situations like that. Deborah, I wanted to expand on my first question. Do you have any idea what percentage of casinos apply for what we just discussed as far as being under 500 employees, and possibly how many employees could be displaced if that funding doesn't come through in Nevada?
I'm sorry, I don't know numbers, and it's not. I have asked about it. If anybody knows something I don't know, feel free to send me an email at dsaunders@reviewjournal.com. But I mean, this is a tough situation, and hopefully they're going to work this out. So when I asked the president about it, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, he said he'd look into it, and they changed the policy, but they didn't change it enough. And again, why you want to discriminate? Again, and remember, Donald Trump thinks he can win Nevada in 2020.
He does.
And this is right. He does. And this is the kind of thing, it just doesn't make any sense why you do that if that's what you want to do. And again, no one's saying change how SBA gives other loans. This is CARES money. This is for businesses. I mean, these casinos were told they had to close down.
Right. It's not a bailout situation. They didn't do anything wrong, so to speak, and that goes for a lot of the rest of the country. I wanted to ask you about Las Vegas. As we know, you pay for the police officers and the fire department and city employees. You pay for that with sales tax money. Well, we also are exempt on the food tax side of things. So right now, if the strip is closed and all the business, let's say we stay closed through, I don't know, June or July, do you believe, because I believe that Las Vegas will require some major federal funding to make up for that lost tax revenue just to keep things going. Do you think that would come through?
Well, that's something that Congress and the White House are negotiating right now. We obviously states and local governments are, just as we've told all these businesses, this has happened to you through no fault of your own, we're going to make you whole. I think you're going to see, relief. Yeah, I think you can expect that.
Deborah, are you going to be at the press conference today?
No, I won't.
When's the next press conference you plan on attending?
Well, so there's a rotating schedule, but it depends on when they have briefings. But I should be there in about 8 days.
What is, and tell me if you can do this, what is the next question that maybe you haven't asked the president that you would plan on asking him, besides asking him, does he listen to the Vegas tape? Because obviously that's a very important question. But no, but in all seriousness, is there a question that you haven't asked him yet that you're saying to yourself, next time I see the president, I got to ask him this? What is that question for you?
I'm not telling you, but I do keep the questions I want to ask him in my phone so that if I ever am just walking by and someone says, hey, do you want to go to the Oval? I'm ready.
That's fair. That's fair. So
I think that's very reasonable.
The president, as you mentioned, these press conferences are extremely long. Do you wish, or what is your take on, would you rather hear more from, say, the doctors, Dr. Fauci, Birx? Would you rather hear more from them, or are you okay with the way they run these press conferences and you think the president is doing absolutely nothing wrong by going up there, talking for a while, and then taking a bunch of questions? Are you happy with the way it's going now, or would you like to hear more from the doctors from a reporter's standpoint?
Well, let's talk politics for a minute here. How the public perceives Donald Trump in November, we're not sure, right? But one of the big influencers on that will be these briefings. And it's really quite possible that people are going to be turned off by his demeanor. It's also possible they're going to say, boy, I love those briefings. And I saw this guy, he had all these experts around him. He's done a wonderful job. And I don't know where that's going to shake out. Have there been times when I thought, well, when you're in the room and you want to get a question and you want it to go on forever, let's just say that. When you're at home watching, because you can't be there because of the social distancing policies, you might think that it would be nice if something ended. How's that? Is that a good answer?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic answer.
Really
I mean, you've been a conservative opinion page. You wrote a column in the San Francisco Chronicle, right? You've been for 24 years. You did that. You've been, like I said, you have quite an illustrious career. You've been doing this for a long time. I mean, is this even surreal for you? I mean, to be able to cover this. I mean, is this, when you look back on your career when it's all said and done and you're retired, will you most likely look back on this and say, wow, that was probably the craziest time in my career, going to the White House and asking the president questions with the entire country watching?
Boy, I tell you, you think it can't get any crazier, right? And I mean, this coronavirus, who knew it would be like this? So, yeah, I mean, there are just times when you're and you're watching what's happening, and it is surreal. And there are a lot of other things going on at that White House, too. I mean, last night he tweets that he's going to basically stop immigration at 10 o'clock at night. I mean, and they're just sort of throwing stuff all the time out there. And so, yeah, it is different. I mean, and there was a story in the New York Times that said his chief of staff cries at meetings. Like,
Oh, my God.
A little surreal. And there's all sorts of different things going on over there. So I don't know how it ends.
Well, let me ask you.
No idea how it ends.
I don't think anybody does. I think we're all in it on this, and you know more than most people, that's for sure. So I want to ask you this question, and maybe it's speculation. I think it is. But you have your pulse on this. You're at these press conferences with the president. We had Mayor Goodman on yesterday. You've had
conversations. She was very animated.
Yeah, well, she was. She was a bit testy. But, with all the information that you know, Deborah, and you know certainly more than us, do you think that Las Vegas and the state of Nevada opens up on May 1st? I know this is a loaded question, and I know it's a hypothetical, and it's an educated guess on your part. I totally get that, and I'm sorry for putting you in that position. But what do you think happens here in the next few weeks? Do you think the state of Nevada opens up, and then maybe you can give your general opinion on the entire country?
Well, I don't think that Las Vegas opens up in one day. I think it's going to be a gradual thing. And I have no idea what Governor Sisolak's going to do, not for lack of trying, right? And so I think what will happen is it'll be gradual. I mean, you saw the what is it, Opening Up America? I love this, Opening Up America Again. Sounds like Make America Great Again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So these are the guidelines for opening up the country. And so,
branding.
They don't say just do it all in one day. It's going to be gradual in most places. And I think that a number of, we know that there are people in the casino business who want to open up things sooner rather than later. But, the public also isn't ready for this right away either. Right. You're not going to, if they were to open up the whole strip tomorrow, I don't think it would be 50% full. Do you?
No, I think people are scared, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be gradual. I guess my question is, when are things going to start to open up? I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. Do you think May 1st, maybe we start that phase one? Do you think the state of Nevada is ready for that?
Well, yeah. I mean, you live there. I don't. I'm here in Washington.
Sure.
But I think that a lot of people, I just see it where I am, and I've been good about following the rules and everything else there. But you see, when I went out into the White House Sunday, there were more cars on the road than there were a week before.
You're right. Yeah, I agree with that.
People are getting out more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people are getting out more. People, and you can only do this for so long before people get itchy and they want to get their lives back. And I'm
That's very true.
Lucky, right?
Yeah.
I can work at home. I've got a nice house. I can get outside whenever I want to.
The president is calling you ma'am. You got a lot going for you. Well, Deborah, let me finish.
People who don't have that.
You're right. There's people that have to put themselves in harm's way.
Yeah, there's no question. Well, Deborah, let me say this. First of all, we're glad the state of Nevada and the Review Journal has a great reporter like yourself, really asking the questions that we want answered. I think, I don't think I know. You're very, very good at what you do, and we really appreciate you taking some time to join us. And maybe in a few weeks down the road, we'd love to have you on again. And we certainly, I was a reporter for 10 years. I have the utmost respect for you. And please keep up the great work. And we love the questions you asked here in these press conferences. And stay safe and say hello to Jim Acosta for me if you can.
I shall, and send me any question ideas you have.
I will, actually.
Absolutely.
I will. I appreciate that. Deborah, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate
thanks
you.
a lot,
Thank
Deborah.
you.
My pleasure.
There you go. Deborah Saunders. Wow, I'm really impressed with her. She's fantastic.
She was good on air, too, Brian.
She's fantastic. Yeah she's